Paul Morris, welcome back to Digital Farm TV. When we spoke to you this time last year, the outlook for agriculture and agribusiness was very bullish. How's the past 12 months treated us? What's the outlook at this stage this year?
Yeah, well look, 2011-12 was a very positive year for Australian farmers across Australia. We saw a very high crop production, reasonable prices and really good export and production returns for agriculture producers in Australia. 2012-13 has seen more of a mixed picture for Australian farmers. We've seen grain prices up, but production down after that very good season in 2011-12, more of an ordinary season this year. On the livestock side, the opposite, we've seen production up and livestock prices down. So it's a very different picture than where we were 12 months ago due to that sort of difference in prices and production outlook for our sectors.
What's your message to farmers today on climate change and the economic impacts that might arise from it?
Well, clearly climate change is happening and so there's two implications of that. One is that farmers are going to have to adapt to a changing climate because whatever we do today in terms of trying to stop climate changing will only have an impact sometime in the future. So there will be a need for them to recognise these changes occurring and to adapt to them. Secondly, there will be some government policies in reaction to what's happening on climate change. So we've seen a carbon tax introduced in Australia and that's imposing costs on the community to try and reduce carbon emissions. In a climate change sense it's very necessary, but of course that imposes some drag on our industries as well. For agriculture, it's been excluded in terms of their direct emissions, but of course they do have some implications for them in terms of what's happening to input prices, and the prices that processors are passing back to farmers as well. So both those factors need to be considered, the impact that's happening on input prices and also how they're going to have to adapt to some of the changes that might happen in the climate going forward.
This might be a tricky question, but later this year, if the current opposition wins government, then the climate tax will be abolished, as I understand it. Is that going to have an immediate short-term impact economically on our farm sector?
Look, it's probably premature to say what might happen at election time, so it's hard for me to speculate on that. We don't really know what alternate policies might be put in place, but we can only comment on the current policy of the day, which is the carbon tax at the moment. Eventually that will transition into emissions trading scheme, and if we have an emissions trading scheme in place, that will provide some opportunities for farmers in terms of selling carbon credits and things like that into the scheme, and we're already seeing some movement in that direction where farmers are looking at options in terms of creating credits from carbon reduction on their farms. And will also depend on what happens with the price at which carbon is traded at under such a scheme. So really we sort of look at what's happening in terms of known policy as opposed to what might be done in the future.
Paul, finally today, the Outlook Conference, congratulations. It's been another excellent turnout and a fine program of very solid information for people who are interested in macro and micro aspects of Australian farming. What's your take on the success of this year's conference, and what are we looking forward to next year?
Yeah, well look, firstly I'd like to thank all the chairs and speakers and the attendees. It's been a great attendance again, around about 700 people here. A lot of interest by the media as well, because we like to get the message not just here for the people who attend but also outside, and so there's been a great opportunity for the media to get coverage and to send that information outside. I think there's been some really great speeches this year. We've had some really thought-provoking ideas coming out of the conference, and so that always sort of helps our stakeholders to think about issues going forward. So overall, great success I think again.